Welcome back to the ICF series on the 2025 update to the Ethics Code. I'm very excited to be working on this section 4, which is about delivering consistent value. And I have Robin Altman with us today. She was part of the Ethics Code review team. Robin, thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure and an honor, and also to have worked with such amazing people in the code review team as well.
Yes, it is great that you all stepped forward to do this work so that everyone could have access to the new ethics code and the course that's going to be coming out too. But let's jump into section 4.1, which is about a status differential. So what do coaches need to know here?
You know, coaching is such an enriching partnership, and it's a dance between the coach and the client towards whatever their vision is, their goals are, and their overall flourishing. As ICF professionals, we approach this partnership with the bedrock of equivalence. And so there really must be an absence of a power difference between the coach and the client, each coming in as equals to this relationship. Otherwise, the coaching and the partnership can be compromised. So if the coach or the client feels inferior or superior in that relationship, then there's a power differential. So sometimes the client may perceive a hierarchy in the relationship, and that can occur because of cultural nuances, the person's background, age, or gender biases at play, or experience and rank and a bias there. So it's really up to the ICF professional to be consistently aware and mindful and proactive in addressing and managing and preserving the equality with the client throughout the coaching relationship. So the coaching partnership must have a lack of this power difference. And if a true partnership can't be maintained, then the ICF professional is encouraged to seek support, to think through the situation, either through another ICF professional, other ICF resources, or whatever resources they would like to seek, and also to consider and perhaps even evaluate with the client sometimes the possibility of even terminating the relationship. So there's one change in this standard, and that's the addition of the word partnership, which is really, for me and for the team, as we talked about this, at the core of this standard and of the coaching relationship in general. So let me explain what I mean by that. In coaching, while we as ICF professionals are experts in the coaching process and in our craft of supporting others to reach their vision and their goals and thrive, the client is viewed by ICF professionals as creative, resourceful, and whole. And that means that ICF professionals see the client as the expert in themselves. And so both the coach and the client bring themselves to the partnership fully, and therefore they're equal in this partnership and in this relationship.
Great. I could definitely see when you were first talking about how this could be a big issue for internal coaches, especially, but of course also for external coaches. And I like the way that you define this as a partnership, and that helps me to understand how people of very different ranks could become equals. So let's move on to section 4.2, which is about personal limitations.
As ICF professionals, we honor our agreements, and we're committed to bringing our professional best to every interaction with our clients. And this means that we're responsible and mindful of our professional conduct and how we show up by managing personal limitations and really ensuring the consistent quality in our coaching. So let me just start by saying that ICF professionals, we're all human, right? We're all human, and just like anyone else, we have our own life and our own life experiences and realities that impact us. What can get in the way of coaching sometimes is these internal conflicts or limitations from our own work or from our own life experiences that can sometimes seem similar to the client's, or there can be a misalignment of values with the client. There may also be external conflicts or limitations, such as a family crisis or an overload of coaching sessions in any given day, or a physical and or mental limitation like that could impact our well-being, such as an illness or stress. And our limitations in our coaching can manifest in the coaching relationship, in the coaching conversation, as biases or assumptions or triggers, sometimes judgments or strong emotions that can impair our presence and the value that our clients are receiving from these interactions. So this standard says that ICF professionals might want to ask themselves a question like, am I fit and well enough to be fully present and be at my professional best in my partnership with this client or this individual at this time? And also to seek third-party support, like having our own coach or mentor or supervisor, or becoming active in our industry associations to ensure that we are continuously at our professional best for our clients. So this standard is really about the self-awareness and the intentionality, and ultimately protecting the client's best interests. And if we see that we can't show up at our professional best, then it's incumbent upon us as ICF professionals to be honest with ourselves and the client, and even think of canceling the session, or perhaps referring to another coach or third-party professional, like a psychologist, lawyer, medical professionals, financial professionals, health and fitness professionals, that might be better suited to support our client at that point in time. An example of this might be someone who is coaching, could be an executive, on a different topic. However, they learn that the executive is a recovering alcoholic. And if that coach has a loved one, or that coach is exposed to and impacted by someone who is a recovering alcoholic or an alcoholic, they may not deem that they are ready or able to be there fully in their presence with that particular client. And at that point, it would be very appropriate for that coach to refer to somebody else, to a different coach, or even to a different professional. The change of this standard from the last iteration in the code is basically just simplifying the language a little bit to emphasize the responsibility of the coach to be proactive and resourceful in resolving the situation should the situation arise. So the language is a little bit less didactic in its approach, allowing the coach to access their own intuition, their gut, their inner wisdom, and also to seek support and resources from other professionals in our ecosystem if the situation arises.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I especially like the part of asking yourself, am I ready to be at my professional best before a coaching session, or even each morning to ask yourself that? But I do want to get on to the next section, which is 4.3, which is about whether or when there's a change or a shift in value. I'm really excited to hear your take on this one, because this was a little bit less clear to me about what might be happening here.
Okay, well, I certainly hope that I could help there. So, in this standard, ICF professionals pledge to maintain the integrity of the relationship by being mindful of the value of the relationship to the client and bringing a customer-focused review process to the client's attention. Now, that may seem like a lot of words, but I'll explain. Ultimately, it's important that we don't assume that the client is getting benefit from the conversations or this conversation, or that we are the best resource for the client's needs in this at this particular time or in the particular circumstance that they're bringing. So it's incumbent upon us to regularly check in with the client as part of what we do, and also raising it when we notice the value may be changing. And we are transparent in raising it, addressing it, and letting the client share where they're at and how they're perceiving the value of this conversation, of this partnership. So if the client isn't receiving value, then we have to be responsive, even proactive, and change something. And this ultimately will preserve the relationship and the integrity of the partnership. And which is interesting because sometimes the client may decide it's not the right timing for coaching. And yet, if the coach raises this with them, the relationship is preserved. They may come back at another time. So it's really wonderful as well to do it. So the coach raises this with the client and discusses it. The coach may ask, is this coaching serving my client? Is this what they need now? We may ask the client, how did we do today? We may ask, what's the value that you're getting from these conversations? What can be improved? Another point is that the coach needs to remain alert for the indicators that the client's needs or that the scope of the coaching is going beyond the capacity or the capabilities of the coach, at which point the coach might be best to recuse themselves.
So, Robin, can you give me an example of this section?
Absolutely. So an example where it's a sponsored coaching engagement and the individual is an employee in the organization, a leader, and they're having coaching. And the coaching is based on a certain development plan that's been either submitted to the stakeholders, submitted to the sponsor or not, but it's been agreed to. And so in the coaching, it could come to a point, and this is a true examples that can happen, that the individual being coached will start requesting a little bit of a shift in what they're looking for in the coaching. They may be asking the coach to talk about what transferable skills they have because they're searching for another role in a different company or something of the sort. If that's the case and the coaching engagement is sponsored by the organization, then that's a disconnect in the goals for the organization that the organization would like to see in the coaching and what the client wants to see. So in that case, the value of the coaching is in question. And at that point, the coach would need to address this with the client and have a conversation about it and see how the client would like to resolve the issue.
Wow, well, that definitely seems like a tricky situation to be in. And I know there's supervision and mentoring, and of course there's all the other ICF coaches, especially when you're involved in your chapter and you have a network of people that you can ask these questions from, or the water cooler. There's a number of resources that the ICF provides to help you resolve some of these things so that you don't go on to your next coaching session where it's really still open. But maybe you could give us one more example before we wrap up.
For sure. So let's say that the coach is contracted for X number of sessions, let's say 12 sessions, and there's a certain agenda for those 12 sessions. And let's say after session number 6, the client, because of your amazing coaching, has achieved all that they wanted to achieve. Every expectation that they had has been achieved at session 6. Well, at that point, it is incumbent, again, upon the coach to understand that they need to check in about the value that the individual is receiving and not just make up more ways of coaching with the individual if they seem to have already received the value that they were looking for. So again, this is not about making any assumptions around this or even considering that we know the answer to that. But that's why we check in on a regular basis to check with the client about the value that they're receiving. Where are they in the coaching engagement? Where are they in relation to what they wanted to achieve? And what would they like now? So it's encouraging the coach to have these conversations proactively, consistently with the client, just to make sure that the value that the person is receiving is what they expect and what they're happy with.
Well, I'm glad you gave us that example. It's a great one to end on. Coaches are so good at checking in with yourself, checking in with your client. So thank you so much, Robin, for your help here, not only for explaining this today, but also for your help to build out the Code of Ethics.
It's such an honor and a pleasure to have worked with everybody and to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Those of you watching, there are places to go now. You can head over here to go up to the next standard or work backwards down here. I'll see you in another video.